that the special town meeting will be coming up in November, so our October 11th meeting will be a public hearing on the warrant articles. And then Hannah, just so that you don't panic over it, we did have a conversation with the town manager after the last public hearing to see if we could have some help with the minutes from that, so.
Okay.
So hopefully that won't be a big burden. The other announcement that I have to make is that the appointment to the Finance Committee is not occurring tonight. There's going to be, as I understand it, it will be done in a meeting on Monday, the 27th. So we won't know anything until our next meeting, or between this meeting and the next meeting, in terms of who will be joining us. And that's all I have for communications. Is there anybody from the committee with any public comment?
I have some questions. If you
Okay.
could just answer real quick,
Okay.
just about the minutes and how to do them. So last meeting, Jay started off because he was secretary, and then I ended it. So when submitting it, I can do both our names.
Absolutely.
And then I can keep him, since the last meeting technically he was secretary, I can keep him on the list as secretary at the very top corner on the left.
You can. You can change it.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
I figured I'd just keep it for now. And then,
we'll just blame him.
and then I was wondering if, anytime we get handouts, if we could get a Google Doc to attach, because you can add attachments to the minutes, just to make it easier for the public to understand what we're seeing, since it's not always shown on TV.
Okay,
Is
so-
that,
Yeah, that actually
Possible?
makes a lot of sense. So any documents that you folks want to present at the meeting, if it can either be put into a Google Doc format, or can you translate stuff if it's sent, or you would prefer it sent in a
I
Google
would
Doc?
prefer it was sent just because I'm not the best tech.
Okay, and I'm not
savvy
sure
person.
how well Excel switches to Google Doc. I assume it translates okay?
I haven't had any problems so far.
If
You having
anybody,
any troubles?
yeah, if anybody needs any help, I can show them how to get around it.
Okay. All right.
And then I just have one more question, which is how many days in advance do I have before a meeting to like send out, like a minimum, like 2 days in advance, like the latest, or
Oh, no, you can
3,
send
4?
them out. You can send them out that day.
No, I know, I just want people to really get a good look at it, so I'll just, okay,
Well, it's, I mean, that's that would be great,
yeah,
that day, if you can get them earlier.
yes,
I mean, if you can get them tomorrow, that's fine,
yeah,
for tonight.
right,
then,
that
yeah.
would be perfect in everyone's world. We will see.
Except it would be dangerous, because basically, if I know that there's 2 weeks between tonight and the next meeting, I might not look at them for a while, and it'll
Okay,
get lost in the
all right.
mail.
Yeah.
But if I may interject, a couple of things. First of all, I really was happy to get the minutes before the meeting, so it allowed me to refresh my memory about what happened in the last meeting. Secondly, that really only works before the core budgeting season, when we have weekly meetings, because the time constraint is pretty ferocious.
Yes.
So don't make yourself crazy over that,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And again, like basically the public hearing, hopefully it will work that out so that it won't be as big a deal as it has been in the past.
Okay.
Any other-
That's it for
That's
me?
it?
That's it.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone on the committee?
Not me.
Any public comment from anybody in the, oh,
Good evening. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. For full disclosure, before I make my public comments, I am a elected member of the Board of Health. I am here speaking as a private citizen this evening, and I'm also speaking as one of the appointees scheduled for the meeting Monday night for appointment to this board. I'd like to bring to the attention of this board a section in the charter. Section 7-8, Procedures Governing Multiple Member Bodies, Paragraph F. Filling of vacancies. Whenever a vacancy shall occur in the membership of an appointed multi-member body, the remaining members shall forthwith give written notice to such vacancy to its appointing authority. If at the expiration of 30 days following the delivery of such notice to the appointing authority, said officer or multiple body has not appointed some person to fill the vacancy, the remaining members of the multi-member body shall fill such vacancy for the remainder of any unexpired term by a majority vote of the remaining members. I interpret this as the Finance Committee's appointing committee has lost their window of opportunity to appoint the replacement for your board, and the charter clearly states that it's now in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be interesting. I guess we'll bring that to town council. I have no idea.
I don't either.
Interesting.
But thanks for bringing it to our attention, Dave.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, we won't have access to town council until, I guess we'll check with next week.
No, but they just talked about his meeting times.
Oh, I wouldn't do it through meeting times. I think at this point, I would just go through Heather to
Yeah.
town council to determine whether or not it's out of the appointing committee. But I think that means we've also missed our window of opportunity.
No.
Okay, well, I guess basically, yeah.
It needs to be interpreted.
Yeah. Let me do a town council check. And then hopefully we'll have, at this point, I would still plan on a Monday night meeting, since it's been posted. And then, if for some reason it needs to be canceled, then it will be canceled. But I'm anticipating we'll get word back on Monday.
Dave Passios again, just as a follow-up comment, I will be emailing the town manager so that she will be aware of my comments this evening.
Sure.
And I would assume something will be decided Monday early in the day.
That was my plan, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe, if I might, maybe David could copy you on the email so that you're consistent?
That would be fine, yeah. If you would like to copy me on the email, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, any other public comment from the public? No other comment? Okay. Then we will go straight to, John is coming into one of the, oh, I'm sorry, no, I skipped right over the agenda item that's not on this
Yeah.
copy of my
Yep.
agenda. We need to take a vote on making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen regarding the free cash language change that was presented and discussed last week, or was presented last week. We discussed it, and we did not have an action item on the agenda to vote it, so we're voting it tonight. Have people had an opportunity to review the free cash?
I tried to find my copy online. I couldn't, maybe it was handed to me last meeting, but
I think it was a handout.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Would you like to take another look at it?
I would.
There you go.
Here you go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll pass that over and we'll come back to it. And we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the discussion around the budget related to, or the information that you wanted to discuss on property condition assessment and capital needs. And that's, I'm going to ask John to take over at this point, his discussion.
What I'd like to do is pass this sheet out. It's, let's see, we've got 3 here. I think you've got 3 copies. Copies
I
are one
have
for
2.
you and 1, 2.
I have 2.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll keep 1 for myself. Okay, and Anna.
Thank you.
What you're looking at here is a very general overview of the forecasted revenues and expenditure for the next 5 years, including this current fiscal year, FY19. It's laid out by the town manager, Heather Lemieux, and then a total for those 5 years. Then underneath that is a very, very general overview of the property condition assessment that was given to the town from Vertex several months ago. And just to hit the highlights, the property condition assessment dealt with the condition and the remediation required for Town Hall, TC Passios, Turkey Hill Elementary, Vitter, Brooks House, and Eagle House, and the old primary school. And just the quick overview totals are that the study suggested or recommended that it would require about $3.4 million worth of remediation to 6 of the buildings and $400,000 to demolish the old primary school. And beyond that, capital outlays through the next several years of $8.6 million for the 6 remaining buildings. And then, just as a context, I put to the right of all the figures, the capital improvement request for the next 4 years, 2020 to 2023, which is $5.3 million, or about an average of $1.3 million per year. And just to give you some context, for fiscal 16 and 17, the average capital expenditures were somewhere around the neighborhood of $600,000. The whole point is that these are additional expenditures that they're requested or required, probably can be managed, but they still are some almost certain, in my mind, future claims on town revenue. And so I just present that for your consideration for discussion here, and it may give us a context for when we go into budget season, how we approach the budget season, mindful of the fact that this stuff is these are probable requirements for future revenue.
Under the capital improvement request total
Yep.
over the next 4 years, is, under your other considerations, you list increased officers at the police department and the fire department, increased paramedic. Are those numbers factored into the 4 years?
Those numbers are not factored into those 4 years, with the exception of the fire department ambulance, which the fire department would need an ambulance to accommodate the additional paramedic or increase in paramedics. If I could go a little further on that, as you recall, Chief, the police chief had given us a schedule some months ago regarding increasing the police force by some 10 officers, 1 officer per year for the next 10 years. And the first officer does not need an additional cruiser because they have a cruiser that they can let that officer use during his or her shift. But any subsequent increase in police officers, patrol officers, would require 1 cruiser for every 3 increases. So, and that is not factored in the capital improvement request there.
When you're talking ambulance, you're not talking an additional ambulance because of the paramedic status. You're talking about improvements that would be required on top of the ambulance,
Yes,
so an additional
yes.
40,000 per
Yep,
ambulance,
yep,
or
yep.
whatever that figure was. Okay. Questions for John?
Hi, George.
Hi, John. Very, very nice job of pulling this together. I just have a few comments as I look at your draft here. In addition to the buildings that are sort of earmarked as being excess properties, what I see missing here is we have a public safety building, we have a library, we have a elementary school. I'm not sure about the age of the DPW building. But, and I'm looking through this spreadsheet I have real quick, and it looks like most of these buildings came online around 2012, if I'm correct? Roughly?
I think the
When I
DPW was earlier than
Yeah, I
that.
thought it was earlier than that.
Okay.
I thought the buildings, so the
Primary
buildings
was
came in
2005.
online
Yeah,
somewhere. in
primary as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this is,
Yep.
all these other buildings are probably at least 10 years old now,
Yep.
going on more. Typically, at 10 years, every building, whether it's residential or commercial or a town building, all needs TLC. You know, are any of these buildings going to be needing a new roof soon? I don't know the answers, but I have concerns that we have other commitments we're going to be making along the way on top of all these.
So we need to look at the whole picture, not just the few? Is that what you're trying to, like, look at all the buildings rather than just these particular ones?
Right, and I think the reason why these particular ones were pulled out was because these are the only buildings we have the current property condition assessment available for, and that all of these are on top of anything that's in the capital improvement requests. And what I'm not sure of is if there's capital improvement requests that are related to those other buildings that he mentioned.
Yeah, and my concern is there may not be, but they're going to be on the horizon at some point.
And to Terry, you got a good point. There are a few capital improvement requests in the $5.3 million that are in fact related to building improvements. Some with respect to the new school, for instance. So there's that. But to George's point, yeah, that's very good. I know that the library is celebrated, the new library celebrated its 10th year 2 or 3 years ago. So these buildings, and then the library, public safety building, and primary school, I know were all built, 15 years ago, do you suppose?
Close to it.
So, close to it, yeah. So, yeah, to the extent that now they're showing their age, those should be in the mix, but of course, we don't have, well, I haven't had any hard information about how much remediation they need, or
Right.
TLC.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think you've done a great job. I just think we, at some point, need to explore these other buildings too, to, maybe, maybe I'm not,
Yeah.
maybe I'm overly concerned, but you just don't know what you don't know at this point, where we're trying to look out into the future and understand what the impacts of capital projects and stuff are.
Yep. Oh, thanks. Anybody else? The whole point here was to open this up to the committee and also to the larger public, and see if anybody has any input. Now, if I may, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I did pass this over to Mrs. Brochu, just for her preview, and she had a couple of points about this regarding, say, using debt, regarding the possible free cash for the next, that looks like, the town looks like it has. So this is, right now, my presentation was pretty much doom and gloom, but Karen will offer some rays of sunshine, I'm sure.
I don't know about that.
At least a little broader perspective.
Well, no, one of the things that I talked to John about when he came in was, and I have been telling you guys this all along through not FY 18, that it looked like we were gonna have a very good year. And I did go over the revenues and expenditures, and I can do the same for the Finance Committee tonight if you'd like me to. But I did do that with the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday night, and we will have a significant increase in our free cash certification from the close of FY 17 to the close of FY 18. So one of the things that we were looking at was, and I know Heather had talked to you about this before, we had the $130,000 for the asbestos remediation at the Turkey Hill Elementary School that is now being funded through the state. So we had voted that at the last town meeting. I believe the appropriation was from free cash. And then we had borrowing authorization of $480,000 for the ladder truck, a portion of the ladder
Yep.
truck. So one of the things that I was talking to Heather about, and I mean, it's something that we'll have to discuss and decide if it's the right thing to do, but whether or not it would be possible to eliminate that borrowing and pay for that ladder truck with free cash, so that we can eliminate the cost, the interest cost going forward. And it would be something that we wouldn't have to fund over the next 5 years. And then, that being said, even if we did that, I still think we would probably have close to $1 million that we would have available to us in this fiscal year for use in FY '20.
I have a question, if it's
Go
okay.
ahead.
So with the possible $1 million for FY '20, is there a chance of getting the third stage of Turkey Hill done? Since,
Well, I mean, that would
Or
have
do
to
we
be
not know the
something that
cost
they
on
would
that?
have to discuss with the capital planning committee and that sort of thing. But I think that the thought process was, when we submitted to the state, that it was for what we're doing now.
right,
But I mean, I do know that there's additional needs down there, so whichever way we did it, it would definitely be beneficial, because we would
Yeah.
have the funds available and we wouldn't have to, I mean,
And I
my,
really like
my
the-
biggest thing, in my opinion, would be to try to reduce the borrowing on the ladder truck, so we don't have to pay the interest costs
Right.
that are
yeah, I was gonna say, I really like the idea of not having
Yeah.
to pay an interest,
Yeah.
because that saves us a ton.
And then, looking down the road at what John had put together, there are going to be items that we will probably have to borrow for. So rather than borrow now, or even try to set some money aside so that when we do have to borrow for the larger purchases going out, we don't have to borrow all of it.
Yeah.
We'll have some funding available to us, so.
And just to clarify for everyone that the free cash we have can only be used for non-recurring items,
Correct.
non-recurring expenses. That would be capital equipment?
Yes, definitely.
Primarily, I can't think of anything that comes readily at hand besides capital, if you include in capital the building maintenance requirements.
No, and typically, that's been the policy with our free cash,
Yeah.
and I think that policy was written just for that purpose, because you don't know whether or not you're gonna have that free cash from year to year.
And you certainly don't want to have something that, say, in operating expenses, that then has to be re-upped every year if you're relying on free cash to do it.
Right, and
So-
I mean, I know the only operating expense that we've used a portion of free cash to fund would have been our snow removal costs.
Okay,
But
so
we
like a
try not
building
to
though
do
would
that
be,
either.
something that would have to keep going because it's constantly maintenance and.
Correct.
Okay,
All right,
good
and
to
then
understand that.
I'm going to assume that the borrowing for the fire truck, there's not more expensive debt that we can pay down. It's not like we don't have anything out there that we're paying, like, again, I don't know where the interest rates are, but,
Well, I mean, we could definitely speak with our financial advisor and get his opinion on what he thinks would be the most beneficial, but for the dollar amount that we're talking about,
Mhm.
my suggestion would be, if we can avoid the borrowing, just not do the borrowing, and what's on the books stays on the books. But,
yeah, I mean, it would be good to check with the financial
Yeah, we
advisor.
can
I think, 'cause
definitely do
Because I'm
that.
also just, looking at how close we are to getting some of the old debt off. But it might be too big a chunk of change to really touch, so. Okay, well, and then again, just the $1 million that you're talking about for next year, you're anticipating that for next year, there will be an additional million in free cash that we're
Well,
going to be
no,
identifying?
the $1 million that I'm talking about, I believe at this point in time that we're probably going to have free cash certified as of the close of June of 2018, effective for 7/1/18, for use all through this year, in the amount of $1.5 million.
Karen, do you think that's sustainable, or is this a one-year hit?
I mean, I was asked a question by one of the board members the other night about upping our revenue estimates, whether or not we should do that, given the fact that our free cash increased so much from the close of 17 to the close of 18. And you've heard Heather say it in her presentations. I mean, this isn't going to happen every year.
Right.
The local receipts are elastic revenues, so they tend to flow with the economy. So in my opinion, we're better off being conservative with our estimates and having a surplus, because typically that is how we fund our capital plan on an annual basis. So, I mean, I wouldn't increase the estimates. You don't know whether it's sustainable or not. That's why we're very conservative with our local receipt estimates, because that translates directly to free cash at the end of the year if we have a surplus. But on the flip side, if we estimated our revenues and we didn't collect them, we would be looking at a revenue deficit that we would have to raise. So,
Were you continuing to see an increase in the excise tax revenue?
yes.
So-
Over the last 2 to 3 years, there has been an increase.
And it's still basically coming in at $50,000 a year, or?
No, it's more than that.
A significantly higher increase?
More than that. But we've been increasing our estimates by $50,000 plus in order to get that money into the pavement management portion of the general highway maintenance budget, so
Right.
that we get to that $1 million goal.
Sure. Now, with free cash, that's a result of either expenses not being as high as planned or revenues being higher.
It's a
than
combination of both, and I can give you a quick summary
Please.
of the way that we ended. So our local receipt estimate was $2,940,817. We actually collected $3,468,170. So there was an increase from our budget to actual numbers of $527,000. The majority of that increase was made up of two different things. We had an increase in our motor vehicle excise from the estimated amount of $207,000. And we had an increase in, let me just find it here. Where is it? Penalties and interest. And that's basically penalties and interest on taxes. We had an increase over our estimated amount of $135,000, and that was largely due to the fact that the collector's office pursued the collection of real estate taxes.
So-
I mean, we actually sold, you know that we sold some of our tax liens to that company, and we did a mailing to people that were in tax title, and we got a very good response because people were aware of the fact that we were aggressively pursuing collection on those real estate taxes. So, I mean, those were two of the biggest ones. We also had $103,000 more in departmental revenue schools, and that's the money that we get from the state for the students that are Medicaid eligible. But you never really know what you're going to get from year to year, so we have a tendency to keep that estimate low, and it turned out to be much higher than what we had anticipated. As far as the taxes go, we collected 99.4% of the tax levy. We received $511,000 in tax lien revenue in 2018, which was about $400,000 higher than what we had received the year prior.
All right.
So as far as free cash goes, they don't even, or when they're calculating whether or not we have what they would call a revenue deficit, they don't even look at our real estate taxes because they consider those 100% collectible. So when they're calculating whether or not we have a revenue deficit, and this is on the Department of Revenue side, they don't even look at your real estate taxes. They only look at your state aid receipts and your local receipts for the most part. So in those two categories, if you estimated $1 million and you only collected 700,000, you would have to make up that difference.
Okay, I am a
If it
little
goes
confused.
the other way, then that's your free cash.
What I'm confused on is I thought that the tax liens were reflective of taxes billed and would have already been recognized as revenue.
No, they're not, they're deferred.
They're deferred revenue.
Yeah, they're deferred until collected.
Okay.
So in the year that we see the big jump in the revenues, we'll also see the big jump in our free cash.
So, and that means that that might not happen again. 'cause-
Correct.
Okay.
I would think that because of the push to collect these liens, it's unlikely to recur, or certainly recur in the amount that it did.
In the amount that it did, I would say.
Or that soon.
Yeah.
Or that soon, correct. So that's basically on the revenue side, a summary. Well, one of the other things I did mention the other night is we did not, on the cherry sheet, we had $119,000 that was budgeted for our 40S reimbursement, which is the Tri-Town money.
Sure.
We haven't received that money yet. And I'm told by the state that the amount that we will receive for that is probably more like $20,000, because the amount was prorated because of the amount that actually ended up being funded. But I haven't seen that yet. And I was going to accrue that in 2018, but given that we've closed the year on such a positive note, there's really no reason to do that. So that's on the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, we did have some appropriation closeouts, but one of the big things on the expenditure side was that our choice and charter tuition assessments for the students that go out of district were $290,000 less than the amount that we received as an assessment on our cherry sheet.
Wow,
So that was
great.
a positive thing. And then we did have $399,000 in appropriation closeouts. So we had almost $400,000 in appropriation closeouts, and we had $290,000 less in state assessments on the expenditure side. So that $290,000 figure for the assessments, I wouldn't guarantee for sure that that would happen from year to year, because typically, I mean, there's been years that it's swung the other way. So, because what they typically do is they take the number that you had at the close of the prior year as the number that they use for the assessment in the upcoming year, and then those numbers get updated throughout the year, October 1st, I think sometime in March, and then prior to the close of the fiscal year.
How did we do with snow and ice?
Snow and ice, we spent more than what was budgeted, but we covered that. We did a supplemental appropriation to that account from existing appropriations at the town meeting in May.
So we're not entering this year with a deficit in snow and ice that we have to recognize.
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Right, and I think, because I'm wondering if that's one of the reasons why the expenditures came in so much better as well, was because we usually set aside so much money to cover the snow and ice if we can. I know that there's a lot of transfers at the end usually to,
Yeah, we didn't have to do any, there were no transfers that the finance committee was required to sign off on. I mean, I know like on the police side, there was money left in the lockup account, but again, I mean, you fund that at a certain level and you never know how much you're gonna use it. There was money left in the police budget, but that was due to some personnel issues that he had officers that were out. And, we received the reimbursement for them from our insurance company, but there was times that he didn't have a full staff down there, so he was backfilling it with reserves and stuff like that, but he did close out some money in that appropriation. We had about maybe $130,000 in our health, liability, and workers' comp insurance lines, which I think that was probably comprised of two different things. It was that the rates were a little bit better than what they had given us when we set the budget, and also we didn't have the, you always have to budget for some increase in there to cover potential new personnel and things like that, and if those don't come to fruition, then there's a surplus there. And then I know, we lost a few of our retirees over the year and things like that, so we had a bit of a surplus in that account as well.
Okay.
But we had a good year overall.
Any other questions for Karen?
Nope, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll give you the correct spelling on my, make the check out to, okay. John?
Well, just to round out, it's very, very difficult to follow Karen at all, because she gives such a good dissertation. But when this, again, was mainly to do a couple of things. First of all, frame the projected revenues and expenditures relative to what other additional revenues or additional expenditures we as a town face, and to also try to move the scope beyond just the current couple of fiscal years to, say, a 5-year window. Incidentally, just on the 5-year window, one of the things that the Department of Revenue site does caution against is doing anything more than 5 years, because the cumulative annual changes in revenue and expenses, anything over a 5-year window render the annual numbers increasingly less reliable. So this is about as far as as they're concerned, as far as it's prudent to go.
Okay. No, it's good information, it's good to have, and it's good,
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, John.
yeah. Then, the budget dashboard, George.
Okay. Let me bring up my notes. So, I've been trying to collect my data points to build this dashboard, and I've been working with Karen, and she recently gave me the debt forecast, the debt financial forecast, and the town manager's revenue forecast. Those just being a few of the data points I'm trying to chase to build this. I've been able to analyze and learn about the debt forecast model, and I'm just starting to understand the revenue forecasting. I met with John the other night at the library, and John was very good to help me better understand, like, the debt, the town debt policies, and based on my own skills getting a little better in that area, I can now connect to the data that Karen's providing in a better way. So it's slowly coming together. And I'm chasing other data points. I'm not sure where all this is going to end up, but I'm just trying to take a real holistic view at everything I can get my fingers around and somehow bring it together and simplify it all into a basic picture of what's going on. Case in point, I've asked Hannah, if she could get the student enrollments for K through 12 from last year and what they're expecting for this coming year. And part of that thinking on looking at that data point is I'm hearing that this year's kindergarten enrollment is going to grow more than anticipated as we head into the budget season. I'm not sure what that means to, all the budgets across the town, but obviously, we're going to probably expect more increases based on higher enrollments. So And I hear this kind of information just in the passing, so that's why I asked Hannah if she could actually get the real data to give us something to look at.
I emailed Superintendent, Dr. Burnham already, and she's getting the information back to us hopefully at least by the 13th of our next meeting, so that I can forward it to George and hopefully he can continue on with that. And I'm meeting with her on the 5th, so
Yeah.
maybe if I have it sooner, I can just forward it then. But
Yeah, and, I also plan to continue my, population study in the town in general, just to see where things are going. So I'll be working with the town clerk to kind of somehow collect that data and get it into a nice format that we can all look at, just to get an idea of what's going on in town in general. So,
And then this is going to turn into a Google Doc, and this is going to,
maybe,
Shareable.
I'm thinking right now, I'm cooking this into an Access database, and I'm going to put a user interface on top of it, but we'll probably use that somehow to spin this data into some Google Docs that we can share to everybody. But part of this is, obviously, I'm going to ask for some guidance as I'm trying to pull this together from you, Terry, and the rest of the board members. I'll continue to work with the town accountant and with Heather, and my biggest concern is I want to make sure before we put this data out that it's accurate and represents a pretty strong position as to what's going on in town. So I won't be doing this in a silo. I'm going to be asking everybody for help.
oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, that's a good way to do it. Any comments, questions, anything for George?
Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Thanks a
Mark.
lot.
Questions?
Okay, no. So, visual budget. Within the next 2 weeks, Karen, you will get a visit from me. Main reason is I have now the Excel file with all the budget numbers for the last 5 years. We need to somehow put together. By 5 years, I want to show first 5 years of data, and then if everybody agrees that that is really useful tool, then we can go back like all the other towns do for 15 years. Because the historical data is very, very interesting, but I don't want to go crazy before. I had hoped to show some already today, but that's not too easy to set up. And I'm getting the help next week of the Groton IT manager to get it running. Because whatever I tried doesn't look the same it should.
It never does the first time through. But no, I appreciate the effort in that area. I think it will be an interesting tool to have for starting off discussion points. Any questions, comments from Mark? Okay, then we're moving much faster through these. I'm assuming that in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably split you guys off so that you'll have, because you're probably, when you'll be ready to go first, most likely.
Yeah.
I'm just mostly just thinking in terms of when you finally, because we'll probably need to pull out the LCD projector to view what it is that you're talking about
Correct.
and looking at. And probably give that ample time to play with and review. Sorry, I was actually looking to see where you could get the enrollment for Lunenburg for last year, but
For the high school?
for everybody.
Well, for the
I-
entire town, in the past, I've worked with the town clerk on the census.
No, the enrollment for the schools.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm working with Hannah on.
So I feel like when Loxie did her budget presentation, February, March, whenever it was, I feel like she did say the enrollment numbers for last year. So maybe we want to look at that video and just double check it.
We have it, I mean, basically,
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's on the Department of Education website,
Oh,
because they have to do the October 1 report.
Perfect.
So, that's what I was looking for, to see if last year's was up there, and it was. So, but that's last year, and then this year,
How the jump.
probably the most current data they'll have, and I don't know if you want to wait until October 1st to get it, but all districts have to do an October 1 report of all enrollments on that day.
okay.
So, that's when they'll probably do I'm sure that they know how many they have in their schools, but the other piece that has to be picked up are people who are choicing out. And sometimes that's a little bit more work to chase down. But either way, if you guys just give me a heads up in terms of where you might be, in terms of, I'll leave this on the agenda so that we can just get to it and continue just progress on the projects going forward. The other thing I will say is that for the past, I don't know if this will be helpful to you, and maybe I can show it to you after the meeting, but usually when I write the report, I have for the last several years, it all broken out in terms of what the budget was and what percent of the town budget that was.
That would be helpful.
Okay. And I think that was one of the reasons why debt service was just, I mean, basically, debt service is 13% of our town's budget, and that's just, one of the reasons why that gives me an itch. Because basically, when that comes down again, I think that frees up funding for some of the other priorities going forward. And I actually, the other thing is that my assumption is, as we prepare to go into the budget season once we turn over in the year, is that my assumption has always been that what the town manager is presenting for the budget represents the priorities of the town as identified through the departments, the department heads, and the Board of Selectmen. Do you basically anticipate any priorities coming up that we should be paying any close attention to?
Specifically for a special town meeting or for annual?
For the annual budget. I think
Okay.
basically it comes up every year that there's usually some discussions around, and I think that one of the things that I've always kind of looked for was if there's any priority from the Board of Selectmen that give a hint as to, or should I just continue to assume that what Heather is presenting reflects what the Board of Selectmen is identifying through the course of the year as priorities? That would be, okay, then I'll continue to do that. But it was just an interesting question for me is, I don't like making decisions based on, nobody voted for me, so I don't feel, like that. I'm happy to make recommendations, but if there's time if it comes to a point where we have to make a decision about where money will go, which sometimes comes up in the budget process, I feel much less confident about that. Review of minutes. We have minutes to review, Jay sent minutes, and,
Terry,
I'm sorry, Mark?
Can we vote first on the
free
free
cash?
Oh, yeah, are you ready to vote?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
good,
okay.
I'm good with it.
All right, so do we have a motion then to, and this is to present to the Board of Selectmen our recommendation for the change in the language of the free cash policy?
Right.
So do I have a motion?
I move that the committee vote to recommend to approve the changes to the free cash policy of financial policies for review and approval by the selectmen. Board of
Second.
Selectmen.
Have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Okay, so review of minutes, we'll go back to that. Do we want to go ahead and take the minutes that Jay sent out first? And I know that Hannah said that she would like to work a little bit more on the ones from the last meeting, and that's fine. did people have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
I did. And I thought they were good,
They were.
so,
Let me just make sure I have the correct date on the meeting minutes that we're voting.
7:26.
7:26, okay. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 26th?
I move that we approve the minutes of July 26th.
Second.
Mark second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then, did people have a chance to review the minutes as Hannah did them?
I just wanted to make a comment about the lining.
Yep.
I did notice that as well, but I thought I fixed it. I know it's like 3 pages long though, so I'm wondering if I need to go back in and tweak it again. Maybe, my
at the
minutes are
alignment?
long. I know. It might have been like 2 or 3 pages. but-
I had emailed Hannah after having reviewed the minutes, and this was after she had said she was going to address some of the typos in
Yes.
them. And I just made the comment that some of the lines did not print out, whether there was a blank space in the center of some of the lines. And I could not tell whether it was my own computer screen that was causing this or it was in general, so that
Okay.
was the only, but substantively, they were fine.
That's good.
Okay, well, then do we want to take action on the minutes, or do people need time to review them?
I wouldn't take action because I know there's also some gaps in there, specifically in Mark's presentation that I left blank, that I already wanted to go back on.
Okay, so we'll take no action.
Thank you.
I lost the agenda again. All right. Karen, did you have any other reports for us? No. Then we will move to public comment. Any additional comments or anything from the committee?
Nope.
Anything from the public? Mr. Passios?
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street again. I don't have the information to tell you who said this, except for the fact that recently, I pay close attention when I hear radio reports and/or television reports talking about the economy and so on and so forth. And most recently, one of the things that caught my ear was a financial analyst being reported on the Boston radio station as saying that the condition of the economy at present is fairly good, but he also warned that the U.S. economy is cyclic and that we should be expecting a downturn in the economy within, and this is a pretty broad time frame, but he said within the next 2 to 5 years, maybe 8 years, but there will be a downturn. And the comment was, take advantage of your opportunities, pay down your debt, and be ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there is nothing else, then next meeting will be September 13th.
Did you want to do department meetings?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't put it in the,
Oh, that was a question I was going to ask.
yeah, I didn't put it on the agenda. I am so sorry. And I think we could just basically, because it is comment, so if you have, does anybody have any reports from any,
I do.
okay, go ahead.
Anybody else want to go first?
Oh, I just have a question about it. I guess, I don't know if we count this as public comment or,
Well, it can be public, I mean, basically, it's not, we're not deliberating anything, we're not.
Okay.
It's basically just you
so would that, whenever
have a
it's...
question anyway.
Yeah,
so.
whenever it's the department review, whatever, is it just going to always be under public comment when I do the minutes?
No.
Okay. It
I
would be
will
an
try to
agenda
remember to
item.
put it on the agenda.
Okay, that's one thing.
That was my error.
Nope, that's
That
fine.
was your question?
Yes.
Okay. George?
Okay. So, Chief Sullivan asked me just to give a high-level update as to what's going on in his department. So, 2 new EMT firefighters have been hired by the town. They're on board. the chief's job recruitment efforts in the beginning were for qualified parametrics. It didn't play out, and part of the reason is the town's salary scales are not competitive to attract employees at this level to jump ship and come over. So he has basically promoted 2 internal resources from the town's fire department. They're now the 2 full-time firefighter EMTs. One of them is currently enrolled in the parametric curriculum at Mount Wachusett Community College. They're trying to grow these people into paramedics. So the chief authorized some of his department funding to cover the training for this one person. He only has enough in his budget to cover 1 EMT for now. And included in this training program is required seat time for this person to become basically a licensed parametric. So it's a strong commitment to become certified, and that's kind of the direction he's going, to get us to the parametric level at this point. His current staffing with the new hires also includes per diem parametrics. The firehouse, for the most part now, is being staffed 24/7 through, like I say, through a mix of the per diems and the full-timers. I'm going to try and review the chief's current coverage metrics and then connect that to a comparison to last year's matrix that he had, just to kind of report on where we've come from and where we are today, to kind of show the benefits of investing in the new hires. And he's finalizing the specs for the town's new fire truck. He tells me the purchase will not exceed the town's approved budget, that he's actually leveraging the acquisition process through the state bidding process. That'll bring those numbers in line. So it hasn't been ordered yet, but he's finalizing the specs. The chief asked me to raise a concern to the committee. John, you probably know about this where you're on the capital planning. But he wanted me to mention that the town's ambulance is now going on 11 years old.
Yep.
I'm not sure if everybody on the committee knew that, but he kind of wanted me just to raise that as a concern that he has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chief isn't shy about that.
No.
Yeah. So,
No, but we have nice new roads now, so
oh, they're the
hopefully
best, yeah.
the rides won't be so bumpy.
So I also tried to reach out to the DPW secretary to try and schedule a meet and greet with DPW Director Rodriguez, and we're still working on that, so.
Okay. Very good.
All right.
Anyone else?
I just have a meeting coming up on September 5th with Dr. Barnum, superintendent, just to get more information. She just, instead of giving me any updates right now, she'd rather have it go through the school committee first and let them be aware of things that she wants to talk to us about first.
Sure.
So, that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it? That's it?
Really?
Okay. I'm sorry, and if I send out the minutes without the, or the agenda without missing any components, just please feel free to let me know.
Okay.
All right, then, next meeting is September 13th. I can't believe that the next meeting is September 13th. And I guess if there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. So we're adjourned at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right.
On the dot.
That went much faster than I expected it to go.